So when we were growing up, we didn't have abundance of anything except for love. We never really traveled very much. We never ate out. We never, bought stuff. Materialistic elements was never really something. I actually lived for the first 15 years of my life mostly through hand-me-downs. I usually get like one pair of clothes a year. My dad passed away when I was 18, just turned 18. So that's then sort of turned my world upside down. So in India, the culture is that the male child who's the eldest male child take responsibility for the family, even if your mom's working and she's very well capable of sort of supporting the family. The culture where I grew up was never really supporting or encouraging entrepreneurship. Everybody wanted safety and certainty in their life. Yeah. So 4 months into moving here, 2019, COVID happened. So literally, I came here not knowing anyone. Nobody told me how to do anything. I actually figured out everything by myself.
And then got locked in your apartment.
I had about 300 quid in my pocket when I moved here. Like there's nothing else. Nobody. I didn't know anyone. Started looking into this in details. I understood that as well. I think about 60% of the food businesses were failing in the first 3 years. I think 64% of food businesses were making losses in 2022, operating losses. So you can see like the big size of the problem there. So the idea is using that technology, using the procurement systems, using the scale benefits that we have, build the Amazon for food. That's my dream. We never know if we're going to reach there, but...
You strike me as somebody that knows their numbers out the back of their hand. What's the value of the company right now?
Right now it's worth close to 2 million quid.
5 years ago, arrived to the country with £300 in your pocket. And now you're telling me that in 5 years' time, the company that you've built off of an idea that was just a pain point that maybe you found when coming to the UK could be worth £10 million.
Oh, 5 years we've got much bigger targets. 10 million is for the next 2 years.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Gooms Podcast. Today, we sat down with Rudy, an entrepreneur who's currently building a business which is going to revolutionize the food industry. We spoke about his journey where he moved from India to the UK to start a new life with only £300 to his name, building and operating a business which is currently valued at £2 million with the aspirations of getting it to £1 billion, and much, much more. Me and Chris learned so much on this episode of the podcast, so I really, really encourage you guys to stay and listen right until the end. Thank you for all the support that you guys have been showing us. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button and enjoy the episode, guys. How much have you raised for the business?
So far 400.
400,000? Yeah. How do you even go about raising money?
You've got to...
Does it get techie?
Yeah, you've got to have a couple of prerequisites for it. You need to have an idea that can be worth $1 billion when it's actually mature. Nobody's expecting you to have so much, traction in the early stages. There is multiple stages to raising funding. The first stage is called pre-seed funding, which is before you even start generating money. So if you guys are really going to this productized parts of like creatives, you could probably spin it off as a VC model as well, if you want to like go global and say you're going to make this much money. But then you've got to justify how it makes that money through a financial model. And then you need a pitch deck. Pitch deck is pretty much like a business plan, but more attractive and concise and very clear. You've got to have all of that. And then you've got to have the right people in the team. So you've got to have some people. Ideally, you'd have people with loads of expertise. So my ops director have got loads of operational expertise. My CTO was my ex-boss in consulting. My chairman of the board has built one of America's largest airline catering companies. The other guy is just the COO. My FD is the current FD of finance director of TikTok UK. So, and I'm pretty much like the least experienced person on the team, but then it's my idea, and then how you present that. So there's all of that element, and then
do you like go into a room with the VC company
virtual
and you
room
do
usually.
Virtual
and you
room run
usually.
A presentation?
Yeah, and then you've got to present a lot of things. So sometimes you start off with virtual rooms, and then they want to see you in person. My VCs didn't want to see me in person, but then after the VC investor, we had venture sort of builders and angel investors. They wanted to see the site and they wanted to invest, after they actually understand how it works.
Is an angel investor someone that just...
Angel investors is different. So VCs are investment vehicles, really. So VCs have... Are we recording now?
Mm-hmm. We are, yeah. You're not allowed to speak about this.
No.
Oh.
I'm just saying, like, if you want me to keep it concise, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just, tell you everything.
I don't mind, but I'm just genuinely like curious, and there might be people that are actually listening that are wondering, like, there might be someone on the other end of their phone screen that has $1 billion idea, and they might be wondering how that they could eventually raise capital one day.
No VC is going to invest money in you without you showing some traction. Nobody's going to invest in you just for an idea, unless it's like OpenAI kind of ideas, like where you've built a model. It's like YouTube buying, sort of Google buying YouTube because they've got some stuff out there. So it's not just an idea, it's actually what you've done with it. You've got to have the right people, you've got to be in the right market at the right time, and you've got to show sizable markets where this can actually grow into a certain level. So I'd say what you need to demonstrate is, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What is the problem that you're solving? What is a market opportunity? How are you making money from it? What is the total market size? And how you approach that market size, as in how you, capture or capitalize on that market size. And then why are you different from the competitors, or how are you beating them? Then you've got to show the financial projections on, X point of time. This is going to be the revenue. This is going to be the profits, and blah, blah, blah. So it should be like, we call it like, what do you call it? It's a curve. Fucking hell. Can't remember.
Doesn't matter.
It's a curve.
Can I pull it back a second, just quickly?
Yeah, cool.
You mentioned that everybody that you've got in your team is significantly more experienced than you are.
Yeah.
Because this is just an idea, right? Before you go and you raise your investment, you need to have these people in place. Are you selling these people on the dream, on the idea, and they're buying into you as an individual in the business model and saying, yeah, I'm in, you can use me?
Usually people start off with people that they know, because it's like a marriage. You need to know, you need to be ready. So when I look at co-founders, I look at competence, I look at compatibility, I look at passion for what we're building, I look at first principles thinking, in terms of, there is nothing there, how are you going to build it from scratch? So those kinds of elements. And obviously their background and their motivation and everything else is also important, because if
you have to have people that align with you, right?
Exactly. So you need to look at alignment in a lot of these different directions. So then you actually have that conversation with them. Sometimes you actually build these ideas with them. I was a sole founder when I initially started, but I've got co-founders now because they've all helped me develop certain aspects of the business. They're not employees, they're team members that have been co-founders with me. So you've got to find the right kind of people that aligns with you and your vision, and you've got to have some sort of agreement. It's not to say that you're not having any disagreements ever, but at the same time, you've got to make sure that they're willing to go the distance with you. So, because this is not an easy journey.
Yeah.
You're always going through ups and downs, as you guys probably know. So it's a case of you being able to sell them. So if you're a good salesman, you pretty much can convince them. But obviously, it's not really the inside of it's not hollow. There is substance there. You're selling them with something, and if you want the right people, then you've got to have some substance to it. So from my perspective, a business can be simply summarized into 3 aspects. One is capital. You need to have capital, because what you do business for, you can solve a problem, you can do whatever the hell you want, but it's not a charity. You need to make money, isn't it? But for you to make money, you need to have money to start with, and that's where investors and your own money and everything. I started off with a big bank loan, put my mom's house in the mortgage to start a business. So I've put my own amount, significant amount of my own money, significant for myself as a person. I'm not that old enough to have a lot of savings. So you bring that capital. With that capital, you actually bring the right kind of people on board. Good people cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. And otherwise, you actually share parts of equity with them. But then that's, we call it a founder's dilemma. A founder's dilemma is, do you want more control or do you want more wealth? So for some people, it's about control. I want to control 100% of everything, but that everything might be just £100,000. Or do I want 50% of a £1 million company? So I want wealth. So he's worth 500k then. So, but then you've got to have a collaborative decision making. 100% is not up to you. So that founder's dilemma is there, but then that's where you look at shareholding and how much of what each person get. And the third part is, when you get brilliant people on board, they then build processes. And these processes then sort of move the product forward. And obviously these are the three elements involved, but the foundation of that is, for any of that to work, you need to have a good product or service. When you have a good product or service, all of this becomes easier. Do you know what I mean? OpenAI can raise billions and trillions of dollars because that product is nearly unmatched. You've got the right people behind the scenes. They've proven themselves. And once you've got to that place, then everybody's got confidence. So in a way, this is all a game of confidence. You know, it's a gamble, but it's also a game of confidence, if that makes sense.
When you sold the vision to VCs,
yeah,
about obviously being in the market that you're in, being in the food delivery market,
yeah,
effectively.
Yeah.
How do you sell that when you said to us off camera that whole market is just going massively down?
So it's different. So you can't sell a VC for a market that's going down. So the market's not going down. So the market, as in the value or the cash that moves around, the value that consumers or customers generate from it, it should not be going down. If it's going down, then you're in the wrong market. You know what I mean? So horse carts. Once the automobiles came in, there is no point of having horse carts around. So if you're selling a VC with a horse cart, then there's no point. But what I was trying to say earlier was that certain business models don't make money. Even if the revenues are very high, the margins at the end of the year. So the revenues is basically the top line. The profits is your bottom line. So when the bottom line is very low, then you can't sort of justify, having a sizable investment, or you have got to somehow show that through operational efficiencies, or as in cutting costs or scale benefits or whatever it is. There are loads of different ways to do it. You are actually making your business more efficient, and therefore you can generate lots more of bottom line. The margins that you make at the end of the year is higher and higher each year. So VCs, when they invest early stages, like they did to us, they're not expecting it to be profitable. So the type of investors who look at profitable businesses are mostly private equity companies. So if you imagine a restaurant business, if you've built a restaurant that's profitable, there is like 10 or 15, let's say 10 different sites there, people love it, there is good brand equity, that's when private equity comes into the place. And private equity buys that business off of the founders or the entrepreneurs who have built it, and then they scale it. They bring in their own management. So basically they pump the capital in, then they bring the people in, and those people build the processes, which then makes it even more profitable that the original guys might not been able to do.
Just keep building.
Then it keeps building.
Expanding.
And then once you get to a point, these private equity companies sell off to another private equity company, which is much bigger. There is loads of examples out there, but generally speaking, that's not the point where we are, or a startup starts. A startup is a place where it's highly risky. It's highly improbable that the business is actually going to survive, but that's where the highest returns is. So one of the earliest investors into Uber was Travis Kalanick. He invested, I think it was not Travis Kalanick. Travis Kalanick was the CEO. Jason Calacanis, one of the top angel investors in the world. He invested, I think, £25,000, $25,000, and I think he got back somewhere around £100 million when he exited the business. Yeah, so the upside is so big that the risk is worth taking. That's where VCs come into the place. But obviously, you've got to convince a VC that all of these elements, like I mentioned before, actually applies. So VC is basically an investment vehicle where a lot of wealthy individuals or previously founders who have made their money put their cash back into, building, people who are building these startups. And they don't want 1x, 2x, 3x returns. They want 50x, 100x, 200x returns. So in my financial model, I had to justify, how do I get to a 200x sort of return for their money in, say, next 5 to 7 years? So that's maybe one way to do it, is by making it profitable and then selling it off to a private equity company, if that makes sense.
Make me want to invest in you.
Well, you've got money. I'm not going to say no. Yeah.
I feel like we've jumped straight into the intricacies of the business and raising investment, and we missed out a big chunk, which I think is probably the most special part of your story, and I think that's where it started. How do we have the Rudy that we have today doing the things that he does today? Where did it all start for you, brother?
Oh, thank you. That's a good question there. So it's never, I don't see myself as a finished good at any point in time. It's always a work in progress. And I think my background and where I come from and my insufficiencies as I was growing up, the failures that I've gone through, and then obviously the opportunities that I've found along the way, as well as the great people that I've been able to engage with and build relationships with. These are all the elements that have actually led to me being who I am right now. So just to give you a bit of a backstory, I come from a rural space in India. It's like a tiny village in Kerala. The state is called Kerala, which is close to Sri Lanka. If you wanna figure it out on the map. So I was actually born into a very working class family. My dad used to have some businesses, but he went to become, he had some health issues and it became a failure. He then ended up working for the government as a clerk. And it's pretty much like an admin job. Mm-hmm. And then my mom was a teacher. I've got a little sister as well. So when we were growing up, we didn't have abundance of anything except for love and a lot of respect and gratitude for what we had. That was very much inculcated in us through our upbringing. One of the things that, obviously being coming from a rural area of the world, you didn't really have a lack of, good food. So I grew up eating really healthy food. However, we never really traveled very much. We never ate out. We never, bought stuff. Materialistic elements was never really something. I actually lived for the first 15 years of my life mostly through hand-me-downs. I usually get one pair of clothes a year, one pair of dresses, shirts or, jeans or whatever it is once a year. And then the rest of it's all the cousins and, neighbors and everybody handing it down. But then one of the key things that, my parents really focused on was education, because they didn't really want us to end up in the same place as they did, even though they were really educated. So they wanted us to think differently. They wanted us to have different opportunities. So I was a straight A student because there was always an expectation of excellence in effort, not excellence in results. So I love that. Obviously took the initiative, and initiative was obviously an ingrained. So I think my mom and dad both have got high levels of initiative. Whenever they don't do anything half-assed, they go all in. So I did that, but then obviously from about 15, 16, you become a late teenager, you become a bit rebellious. I started failing everything. I failed all throughout my late teenagers and early 20s actually. So but around that time, I was becoming a proper spoiled teenager. I spoiled in the sense not because I've got loads and loads of everything, but just because of the parts of your life where you think you're grown up, but you're not really. Mm-hmm. But my dad passed away when I was 18, just turned 18. So that's then sort of turned my world upside down. And essentially that led, so in India, the culture is that the male child, who's the eldest male child, take responsibility for the family, even if your mom's working and, she's very well capable of supporting the family. So I had to take up a similar job as to my dad in the government to actually support the family as well, because you needed that. And my sister was still in school. So I did that. I did part-time jobs, and we come from a family of teachers. Every single person in my family is a teacher of some description. So I actually did some teaching. Kids are not really that much younger than me, but I used to be able to command classrooms and teach kids and tell them what I have learned. Basically, share those ideas in a concise and clear way. So while I was doing all of that, I tried a few different elements, like trying to be a chartered accountant, tried to go into the military, tried to become a pilot. Nothing worked. Absolutely nothing worked. And I didn't really think about business because I don't come from a place in or the culture where I grew up was never really supporting or encouraging entrepreneurship, and it's always risky. Everybody wanted safety and certainty in their life. Yeah. So very much of an employee mindset. So business was never a part of what I wanted to build. I wanted to try and go into civil service, for example, but obviously, as you know, a country as big as India, 1.5 billion people, and the success percentage of you going into becoming a pilot or a chartered accountant or a civil servant, or even going into defense forces, it's 0 point something. So I never managed to get anywhere. I wasn't really excellent in anything. Traveled across the country, lived in different parts of the country. But that's when I realized that economic opportunities, you've got to go outside of where I was born and brought up. But then even though there is economic opportunities, the culture was not aligned with what I was, I believed in. So it was very much of a clash there. And that's when I sort of started looking outwards. That's when I started looking at the world as a whole. We've got a saying called a frog in the well. For a frog in the well is its world. It doesn't know the world outside. So I didn't want to end up as a frog in the well. So I actually started looking outside. There's a lot of things that I've consciously not mentioned, but nobody in my family had ever traveled abroad. Nobody had ever studied abroad. My dad was pretty much the first person from his generation to have a postgraduate degree. So nobody knows like the value of these educational institutions or going into a different country. So obviously, luckily or unluckily, at that point I was thrust up in that place where I had to shoulder that responsibility. That then made me competent, I would say. And that essentially, I think Jordan Peterson talks about it. When you feel like you're stuck somewhere, try and take more responsibility, try and serve people. It automatically brings you some level of competence and, tools that helps you face the uncertainties of life. So I actually went to my granddad, who is no more, but he told me that I could sell some property that he owned and go away. But I was told to never destroy or let go of things that, and it's very expensive. Therefore, somebody coming from a working class family, I would never be able to afford buying that back. So I said, let me mortgage that in the bank and then get that money and then go study abroad. My mum was the only person supportive of doing this. Literally everybody else in the family went, what the hell is wrong with you? You've got a job, you've got a house, you've got a car, you've got a girlfriend, you've got everything that you need.
How did that make you feel?
I think I'm very determined. So I cared about people and I cared about opinions, but in the end, I make my own mind. So as soon as my mum was okay, and that was the only,
I respect that.
thing that I sort of care deeply for, as in my mum's well-being.
That was the one yes you needed.
Exactly. And I got it. And she's the strongest person that I've ever known in the world. And she told me that, don't worry about me, I'll be fine. My sister was in university at that point in time, so she was in a different place. But then we got a dog for her, and she's reasonably okay. Basically, that's when I decided to move away. And I looked everywhere in the world, and obviously you watch movies and everything.
What age were you when you made this decision?
I think I was just turning 21.
Were you not absolutely shit scared to travel across the world at age 21?
Of course, but I'm an extroverted person, and I love meeting people. I love sort of learning things. I was very curious. I'm very inquisitive. I've got a million questions every time, and people hated me for that because people don't usually like being asked questions. But I was scared, but at the same time, there was a lot of things that I didn't know about the world. So when you think you're blindly believing yourself when you don't know what you don't know. So there is ignorance is a bliss, as they say. So I was ignorant to a lot of challenges, a lot of problems, a lot of issues that was going to come my way. If it was now that I'm a little bit more mature and I know all the pitfalls that comes up, I might have thought twice or thrice before I made that decision. But at that point in time, it absolutely felt right. And I'm glad that I made that decision, because it sort of made me who I am right now. And I can't even literally imagine the alternative or where I would be as a 28-year-old in that village. Mm-hmm. So basically probably had wives and kids. And
Well, we wouldn't have had the pleasure of sitting down with you today if you'd never made that decision.
I appreciate that as well. So, it's always a case of exploring what's out there in the world. So obviously asking myself those questions. So I ended up getting admissions from a couple of different universities in the UK. Some of them offered scholarships and everything, but I was a big LFC fan as well. So, and Liverpool is one of the biggest student cities. So even if I didn't get any scholarships, I came to study here. I did my postgrad. So while I was working in India, I actually did my undergraduate through distance learning, distance education. So open university equivalent here. So I barely got through. I was never really excellent in any way. But I was pretty good at use of language in terms of being able to write. But I've never really spoken, as in, day to day using English. And obviously you've probably heard people with like thick Indian accents or accents from where they come from. So I actually was able to quickly adopt and integrate into like the culture here. I actually failed a couple of modules in my first semester, but then I was like, okay, this is a challenge. I need to get this sorted. I am better than this. So I actually believed in myself at that point in time. But then 4 months into moving here, 2019, COVID happened. So literally I came here not knowing anyone. Nobody told me how to do anything. I actually figured out everything by myself.
And then got locked in your apartment.
Yeah, exactly. And then I made a lot of friends. I made friends from around the world. The first 3 months were fantastic. Everything was like, wow, this is great. It's an entirely different world, But then 4 months in, you're all by yourself. So the only people that I had I think about 300 quid in my pocket when I moved here. Like there's nothing else. Nobody, I didn't know anyone. But and obviously you spend that money in the first month because it's exciting, loads of things to try out. And, I started getting part-time jobs. I was cleaning toilets first, then selling shoes, then cooking food, and then, delivery driving, all of that, Amazon warehouse. I've done everything. I've done pretty much all kinds of part-time jobs, even care houses, everything that you can possibly imagine.
Trying to get by.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because nobody's there to go, oh, mom and dad, can I have some money for my rent? No, there is nobody to help there. I actually have to, from month one in the UK, I've been sending money back home to support my mom and my sister and pay for my education loan. The education loan is not the same as you've got here. It's not like they won't say, okay, only after you earn X amount of money. No, they want the money back right away. So, so COVID was a big lesson. And as an extrovert, it's like obviously way more difficult in terms of I've never really been comfortable by myself. But then that's when it sort of taught me the value of being okay by being yourself. So I went into Stoicism, I understood the lessons there, to control the variables that you can control and not worry about the rest of it, building that, the internal peace without external elements to sort of affect those. And then that's when I took up running. I started long distance running, and then I started taking a little bit more responsibility for people around me. I started helping people out, people in different difficult places around the world. Like, for example, they don't know what to do with their life. For example, they don't know what to study. They don't know what university to go. They wanted to immigrate, but they don't know how. So I was actually showing the way for it. Didn't charge anyone anything, completely free of charge as my own way of giving back. And then I was also doing a lot of charitable work, with cancer charities, animal and pet charities, etc. I used to run a lot and raise funding for, charities, etc. So that I did all of that, and luckily got a part-time job as a COVID tester in the same university I studied, University of Liverpool, and they promoted me, in about 2 or 3 months. And then that's when, as an immigrant, you need to have visas to stay here. And when I moved here, we had like 4 months of post-study work visa. So you could stay in the country for 4 months after you graduate. And all of that time was through COVID, isn't it? And with about 1 month to go, and if I go home, I would be absolutely indebted for the rest of my life. I wouldn't be able to afford paying back because I was working full-time in India and doing a part-time job, and I was earning 300 quid a month. That was yeah. So, and I'm currently, like even from 5 years ago, I was still paying 300 quid a month just for my education loan. So that you can imagine, like it's almost impossible. So basically, with a month to go, I got a work visa sponsorship from the University of Liverpool, stayed here, worked in that job, worked my ass off, and obviously I was the hardest working person in the room. I was always helpful. I always showed up as well. But then during the last couple of months of my university, I started getting involved in everything. Everything was mostly remote and online, but I showed up everywhere, and that's the hardest thing to do most of the cases. So from failing the first couple of modules, I was the most engaged student in the university, and I got the award for the best student of the year in postgraduate degree as well. And I took as much leadership responsibilities as I could, in every level. So that obviously taught me a lot, and that changed me as a person. And within that 1 year, I was a whole different person to that person who sort of immigrated here. So for me, I hate opportunity cost. So I absolutely go for everything and anything that I could go. Sometimes it's a sort of a negative because there is like not a real focus. It's like, very much spread across. But basically, towards the end of that year, 2021, I moved to a different job. I think not towards the end, like middle of 2021, I moved to a different job. E-commerce business. I actually built the e-commerce part of an existing physical business, which then I grew to about 100K in revenue in about 3 to 4 months.
Was that all self-taught?
Sorry.
Did you teach yourself all
Everything
of that
was self-taught. Nobody told me how to do that.
What did you do to scale the company?
I was actually running the entire e-commerce part of the business. So anything to do with online sales, anything to do with the online logistics part of it. So obviously started off by building the e-commerce platform in itself. I hired people from around the world to actually help me build that. But it was good that because I had connections in India, I was able to hire people who could do that for a cheaper price and much quicker as well. And then I actually looked at marketing as a proposition to actually target the right kind of people, because this was selling Asian goods and that kind of stuff. So we had like a very, very much a heavy student population in that area. So a lot of these students were Asians, and we could actually capitalize on that. And then obviously optimizing the business to make sure that the margins there. We were still loss making, but it was very high top line revenue business. But then unfortunately that business went under because of like some funding issues. I had nothing to do with that. So I wasn't a CEO of that business or a managing director of that business. I actually came in as a business transformation expert. So, figuring out how you build digital systems into a physical business, but then actually took over that part of the business to then run that e-commerce platform. But then that's also the time when I actually started building my business network around. So that's when I really understood what it means to actually run a business. So I actually sort of built a network. So I actually did a couple of programs, including a mini MBA program. It was a government funded program. Through that, I met a lot of business founders and sort of small and medium enterprise sort of business people, entrepreneurs, for example. But then it also sort of helped me learn from shared experiences. So I was learning through them as well. So I was taking advice from those people. Found some fantastic mentors there. I actually had one mentor for each area of my life and each area of business. And I still try and do that. Not all the time you can do that, but I think that's one of the key ways that you can obviously read books. You can go to a university. You can learn from your own experiences. But if you've got a good mentor, it sort of replaces all of this. So for me, learning is basically, you've got 4 different ways of learning. One is structured learning, university. One is experiential learning, which is work experience and doing the job, or you're implementing stuff. The third one is shared learning, which is what you get from mentors, etc. And then you've got individual learning, which is books and podcasts and stuff like that. So for me, shared learning was one of the key things that I focused on in that year. But then once the business went under, I was actually jobless for a few months, and I went back to warehouse jobs and delivery driving. So, but the reason why I was able to grow the business well was I actually put my heart and soul into it. So I don't do anything half-assed. All my day was spent on building that business. But then I got these opportunities, plus the other opportunity after I didn't have a job. Then I got this opportunity to go into being a management consultant. But all these opportunities, when I look back, everything has come through people that are helping me back. I've helped them in some way without any expectation of getting anything back. These were all good people, and I wanted to do something that helped them, and never expected anything back. But then these are all the people like that helped me back like 1,000x. So for me, that's when I recognized the value of
network.
What do you call it? Adding value to other people's life. Network is important, but you need to have that mindset of how do you lift someone else up without the expectation that, if I do that for him, what is he or she gonna do for me later on in life? So with zero expectations of that. So I then ended up getting a referral for a job, and that's when I became a management consultant. I was a change management consultant for a firm in London. And that was the time that I had, a lot more accelerated learning, because you're in a big organization, global company. You've got several levels of sort of management structure. You've got structured learning within the job, and you're learning so much while working with loads of different people from different functions of the business. So all of that combined, sort of, it helped me understand, how do you deal with people, like some sort of sales skills, for example, some presentation skills, for example, some team management skills as well. How do you lead a project, for example? Those are all the elements that I learned from that. But then it was very, rewarding. At the same time, it was not fulfilling enough in the sense that you're a part of a big machine. So that's when I decided that I needed to do something my own, because regardless of what you do, you have risks associated with, your job, because first job I had some issues, second job I had some issues, third job I was going to face some issues very soon so I think it was the end of COVID, and there was like downsizing teams and everything else. It was not going to affect us at that point in time, but I didn't want to wait for it to happen. So I thought, there is risk anywhere, there is uncertainty anywhere. Safety and security is almost a myth at this current day and age. So why don't I take that leap of faith and build something on my own? But that building on my own is something that I've been thinking about for a couple of years, as soon as I started studying business in the university and everything else. And I had the real experience, of the lack of access to authentic food, and seeing a lot of my food entrepreneurs fail, and not having one system or structure to actually support these food entrepreneurs. So all of these elements actually combined together. At the end of 2022, I decided to go on my own. So that's when I started the business. And from then on, it's just been, a roller coaster ride. And here we are, like, over the last 2 years.
What is your business? Because we've spoken about how you've raised capital. We've obviously spoken about your story and how you've got to kind of where you are now. But we haven't actually explained to the people at home listening what exactly is that you are building.
Yeah. No, it's very straightforward. To briefly give you an intro, I'm building a company called Abjak, Abjak. Abjak is a micro-food hall network.
Why the name?
Abjak, ABJA, in an old Indian language, pretty much like the equivalent of Latin in the Western world. It's a Sanskrit in India. Mm-hmm. It's 1 billion, and K stands for kitchens. So I'm yet to see more ambitious people than me. But yeah, Abjak is basically means 1 billion kitchen, but the idea is build a micro food hall network. The reason why we're building is to empower food entrepreneurs to scale their brands without the costs or the hassle of traditional models. And by doing so, we want to enable everyone everywhere have access to great food that they love, to bring convenience and choice into every neighborhood. So that's the mission and vision behind the scene. But to give you a bit of the backstory, I think I told you when I moved here, there was a lack of access to authentic food. Overnight, my diet's changing. My health has got some sort of issues after, that overnight change of diet. And because of that, I actually started, researching, is this something that is just personal for me, or is it just everybody, who is a first-gen immigrant? At that point in time, I did the research to find there was 10 million first-generation immigrants in the UK. That's 15% of the population, of which I think about 500,000 or above was for sort of international students. And Liverpool has got one of the biggest international student population outside of London. And I sort of interviewed a lot of my friends, and I had this group called Liverpool Life, which was fully international group. And I interviewed students from, I think, about 30 or 40 odd countries. And majority of them had the same issue. So I was thinking, okay, I need to find a solution for this. But then how do I build a food business that solves a problem for all of these people? Because I know Indian food, but that's only going to solve the problems for Indian people or Indian students or Indian immigrants, not the rest of the cultures. So that's when I started looking into the details of food businesses. But that's when I found out that food business is one of the most volatile and risky business to get into, in the sense that it's, as I said, it's high top line, low bottom line. And most people go into the business thinking, oh, how hard can it be? Because it's just literally making food and selling food, and everybody wants food, everybody eats food. But what they don't really, in most cases from my interviews and people that I know as well, is that most people don't even understand the difference between cash flow and net profits. So when you don't know the difference between cash flow and net profits, once you start taking money in, you think, oh, cash flow, that's that. There you go. I've got money in the bank. So this should be working. 6 months down the line, they're in a massive debt already and they've got to close down. But then what happens? Somebody else with the same exact mindset comes in and say, oh, I can do a better job. He didn't do that well, so let me do this better. So everybody thinks that cooking the right food is the only thing there. But there is, as in any other business, every other aspect of the business, including operations to procurement to marketing to logistics and everything in between. Technology is a big part of that. It's got to work together, and then you've got to make sure that this is actually profitable or it's actually growing market size wise or the margin wise. So when I started looking into this in details, I understood that as well. I think about 60% of the food businesses were failing in the first 3 years. I think 64% of food businesses were making losses in 2022, operating losses. So you can see like the big size of the problem there. And I think it's costing about £2 billion to the UK GDP every year because of food business failing. But nobody's talking about it because one guy fails or the other one starts. What happens is whenever there is a failure and there is new businesses coming in, usually who are these new businesses coming in? It's either big corporates or these are big private equity backed sort of companies or food businesses. So what it means is that independent owner-operated food businesses are struggling. So I actually made friends with a bunch of food entrepreneurs out there, and I literally saw a couple of them fail. And I was like, with the consulting brain, I was looking at, okay, why did that happen? Being sensible to their issues. And I understood that there's loads of solutions out there, but none of them are conjoined. Like there is no joint up solution. Pretty much like THG Ingenuity in e-commerce or Amazon in logistics or anything in between. There is no such structure exist in food business that actually solves all these problems at once. And when I looked at the industry issues across different parts of the world, technology was one of the key ways that the problem was solved. And when you look at technology, I looked at, okay, why don't we look at automating? Like instead of people doing the cooking, why don't we have robots? It was 5 years ago when I started having this idea. But at that point in time, robots...
Probably not too far off, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that's growing, and I think in the next 10 years we're going to get there. But I
think
vending
machines that what is it? You get like a muffin or a cookie, and like it bakes it there and then.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a company called Cafe X. They operate in airports, completely run by robots. So it's already there.
The bar we went to, it was like they would make the cocktails for you, but like with a big robotic arm.
Yeah.
And it would
yeah. So that's called collaborative. Yeah. That's called collaborative robotics. So it's not really that. It's not really the same robot that actually does Tesla's manufacturing. It's a different kind of robot that can actually work with humans, like collaborate with humans. So collaborative robotics is usually used for lighter work, not like proper manufacturing.
Yeah. Gonna have I forgot what the Tesla robots are called. We're gonna have those running kitchens soon.
Yeah, so those ones are pretty advanced, and they've like you can't have people around them. But in the kitchen, it's almost at this stage we're not developed enough to have completely humans replaced by robots, because humans have dexterity. They can do 100. So your hands. You can do a lot of things. You can hold a big pot. You can hold a spoon and a fork. You can stir the pot. You can roll the wrap. You can do anything with your hand. Whereas robots usually are highly specialized creatures. So not creatures or systems, which essentially are built for purpose, like built either for rolling, either for the stirring the pot, either for holding heavy things or for small things. Because all these parts, unlike our muscles, are not really. This is a beautiful thing that we've got, the human body. Thumbs. Yeah, the thumbs, exactly. So basically speaking, I think it'll come there. I think there is already the humanoid robots happening. Like, this is pretty much like going to be the future.
Is it the BMW one with OpenAI, and they dropped it and he's like, clean the sink, and he's there and like,
yeah. There's a few different companies out there. I think Tesla's robots, one of the most advanced ones, I think. There is a couple of ones in China and Korea. I can't remember. I've seen them all. I've read about them, but I can't remember the names of them. But some of them are actually so good that they can actually walk and run like a human can. So it's almost impossible to differentiate.
So I know that this is like steering away from what we're speaking
digressing,
about,
but that's fine. That's the whole point, isn't it?
With like in terms of like warfare.
Yeah.
When you think about that and introducing things like this, like I don't know if you guys have ever seen the videos of like, but the robots that are like can use a gun and they can recognize like friend from enemy, etc. And like they're running around, like it is insane. And to think about what that could be one day.
Yeah, it's
we're in such early stages as well, which is the scary part.
Yeah, so there's this company, I'm struggling to remember the name of it, Boston Robotics. Boston Robotics is one of the earliest companies in terms of all of these robots that can do multiple things, including the ones like the robot dogs. You're probably talking about them ones. Look like dogs, but they're robots, but they've got like weapons on them. I think the weapons on them, part of it is like AI sort of generated videos, but because they're probably not using it yet. But I've seen some examples from China that they're already doing that kind of stuff. Drone warfare is one of the biggest things out there. Palmer Lucky's company, is one of the biggest companies in that kind of like modern warfare kind of elements.
But is it Toyota the ones they make them do like parkour like over the big like obstacle courses, don't they? The Toyota robots.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not seen that. I don't know which company it is, but you see these videos all the time. So it's not a case of, it's not like, I would say it's still early stages, but I don't think it's that
far away.
Yeah, that far away that it's going to be that everybody, I think, this might be controversial, but I think like we have smartphones these days, I think in the Western world at least, or in the first world at least, we'll have robots per person. Like everybody will have a pet robot or a house robot to help them with, or every household would probably have a robot. I think it's not really that far off. You can get a Tesla bot, you can book a Tesla bot for about 20K. So it's not like the end of the world. Yeah, and if, for example, the Tesla robot starts cooking food, I'll probably get one of them for my kitchens as well.
For 20K, how much will you save, really?
Yeah, so it's pretty cheaper than a lot of the cars out there, isn't it?
I even saw, it's not like a robot as such, but it's like an automated system. You speak about like cooking food for you, whatever. I was watching a episode of Shark Tank, and it's like an automated kitchen.
Yeah.
That you download the app on your phone, you say what you want for dinner, you fill everything up with the ingredients beforehand, and it will cook the meal for you. Like, it's just ready.
Yeah, I know. I've seen that. So one of my friends is a Chinese chap, and he shows me these videos all the time. So there is a difference there. So the difference is that automation and autonomy is different things. Automation is basically you tell that machine that these are the things that you do, and you do only this, and you do it this way, and you do it as efficiently as possible.
It just repeats.
And it repeats. Yeah. So that's automation. Autonomy is basically thinking on yourself, thinking on
that's the
with
stuff
your own
for
brain.
me where I'm a bit like, whoa.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I was digressing again. Another part of it is, have you heard of Bordy? Bordy?
No.
Rings a bell.
Yeah, Bordy is like a very recent innovation based on, I think, all these large language models out there. Bordy is basically a company. They've got a page on LinkedIn. What you do is, it's an AI super connector. Super connector in the sense, for example, if I know 100,000 people, then I'm probably a super connector. So I know a lot of people who's who, like that kind of stuff. So Bordy is an AI super connector. You go on LinkedIn, you message Bordy, and it goes, okay, this is my email and phone number. Bordy, it's a proper conversation there. You're not just sending, you're saying hello, and then Bordy, there's a conversation there. And then you send the details over, and Bordy then calls you. Bordy calls your number, and I bet you wouldn't be able to differentiate that between a human and a robot or an AI. I had a full-fledged 15-minute conversation with Bordy, and I couldn't figure out that this was not a human.
Does that not worry you, though?
Well,
it's cool and it's exciting, but it doesn't not worry.
There is some worry there, but I think regardless of if I worry or not, it's
going to go that way.
It's the way. Yeah, there is no way that we can do anything about it. And I think AI agents, you probably heard of it, is the future for most businesses.
There's that video of that went super viral on TikTok pretty recently of that girl that she's from Dubai, and this agency worked there and basically created like an identical voice of her that would handle like her calls as an estate agent, like booking in viewings, etc.
That's AI agents, yeah. That's AI agents. So I recently was looking through AI agents. So we want to build AI agents into our platform as well, in the business. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. But the AI agents, this guy is running a single person business, and he's got AI agent who is a director of the business, AI agent who is the admin guy, AI agent who is a computer engineer, and everybody's got specialized roles, but they use their brains. There's autonomy there. So the guy is sending a WhatsApp message, voice note to say, what are my priorities? The director is then delegating the work to the admin person. The admin person reporting back to the director, and the director goes, of all the things that the admin person reported, I think you should be focusing on these XYZ things. So the guy has got to it's insane, yeah. And that's the way that it's going to go. There is no two ways about it. But going back to Bordy, what it does is it sort of passes through all your LinkedIn information, tries to find whatever there is out there online about you. So everything that, you put online, you can find out. But it asks you questions like, why are you doing it? So your motivations, the inspiration behind it, who are you as a person? And then it is having these conversations, simultaneously these conversations. At the same time, it's talking to me, it's talking to 100 other people, or 1,000 other people, or 1,000,000 other people. And all these people are telling it their own stories or their why. Like Simon Sinek says, like your why, magic circle kind of stuff. So then Bordy goes, I think based on whatever you told me, there are 3 people that comes to my mind that you should speak to. And it asks you, and it gives you like a basic background information of all of these people. And then it goes, who do you want to talk to? And if I go, I want to speak to person A, it then sends a message on my behalf to person A, who it's already spoken to, and sends my details across and say, do you want to have a conversation? And that is then an email follow-up from Bordy. And then you meet that person. And I've obviously not had a conversation yet, but I've heard loads of people having introductions through AI. So imagine what you're building or what you're doing has got an insane value to somebody on the other side of the world that you have no way to reach out to, even through social media or anything like that. Social media is like very much wider, isn't it? It's not targeted at certain people. Yeah. It's like very much of a casting the net wide, isn't it? Whereas this one is very much targeted. So you can generate so much more value, or transfer that value between each other through these platforms. And pretty much the same way we use Google AI Studio to stream our screens, so screen sharing kind of thing with Google's AI, and have real-time conversation and say, how do you do this? So my programmer goes to Google AI Studio and goes, okay, I'm stuck with this code. What do you think is wrong here? And it's actually looking at your screen, and in real time, like a human, it's telling you what it is. So there is no excuse for anyone anymore to not be able to learn anything, because you've got the best teacher out there. Not saying it's 100% accurate, it's still early stages, but it's insane the technology that's coming out these days.
I never thought of doing that. That's really, really smart. To be honest with
you. I think you can do it on ChatGPT as well. So if you go into the voice part of it, you can actually talk to it in voice, isn't it? And I think the 3 dots, there is like a share screen, and you can do it with anything, any software out there. And it's got real-time info. With the Google, the good thing is that it's real-time info. I think ChatGPT, I'm not sure if it's real-time.
How are you going to implement AI agents into your business?
So let me go back to where I was, and I'll get you through that part. So basically, we looked at all the different countries and industries and how were they solving the problem using technology. And technology, I wanted to try and use this collaborative robotics, but it was not really something that was mature at that stage. And I actually saw a couple of robotics companies in London fail. And one of my first co-founders was building nuclear submarines for BAE Systems. He wanted to completely go into R&D, but I didn't really have the money. And I took another bank loan to actually start my business. I didn't have any savings, because if you're an immigrant on a visa, every year or 2, you've got to renew your visa. And that visa costs like about 2 to 3 grand every year. So anything that you've saved up goes to the home office. So you're basically, again, my mom was really supportive. She said, mortgage the house. So her house is mortgaged. So that's why, my inspiration is not only the chasing or the chasing success or the want to be successful, but I think more importantly, it's inspired by the want for not to be a failure, because there is big risks associated with that.
Do you thrive under that pressure? Because
I think so, yeah.
There's some people that will take on a challenge like that and, like you said, use it as their inspiration, their motivator to ensure that they do not fail.
Yeah.
But also understanding that the roof over my family's head is dependent on the work that I put in can also crumble a lot of people as well.
100%. I think the world's strongest man, the guy, I can't remember his name.
Eddie Hall.
Eddie Hall, when he was lifting that, 500 kilos deadlift, he imagined that his kids were trapped under a car and he was lifting the car. So it was basically that when you hit that flight or fight sort of scenario, when it's so risky, when it's like that adrenaline rushing, I'm not saying it's good for a sustained period of time, but having that as a motivation, the fear of failure is sometimes a better motivator than the one for success. So essentially, when I wanted to build a business into a place where we were generating revenue from day one, I actually thought of combining all of these elements that I learned from around the world, all the research that I've done, all the people that I've spoken to. So I could have built a software business, easy. There is not a different difficulty there. I could have built a physical business, which was not as scalable, which would then have less impact. But then I combined these two, like a physical and a digital. Sometimes people call it phygital businesses, which is pretty much the most difficult businesses to run. Pretty much like Uber Eats or Uber to Amazon or Airbnb. You can't have the online scenarios, online platforms without the logistics or the operations or the physical sort of infrastructure behind it to support it. So we initially started off by building an piece of infrastructure, like an ecosystem almost, that supports food entrepreneurs to build and scale their brands through us. So we take care of A to Z of it, but they build it with us. So we actually built a couple of brands with a couple of really good people. A couple of them are still working with us. But then we scaled that through dark kitchens because it was the end of COVID. Everybody was going deliveries online. So there was a big market at that point in time, end of 2022. But then later on, we found out that cloud kitchens, the margins are very low because there is a big reliance on third-party delivery platforms. And essentially, that's when we started looking at how do you get direct sales into the business. So that's one of the parts of the business. But then along that journey over the last 2 years, we've been optimizing operations, optimizing technology piece behind the scenes. We don't use a lot of external technology systems. We build our own technology. So everything is controlled. Every aspect of the business, the data is captured. So sales data is connected to the purchasing data. We know exactly how much margins we make at any given point in time, et cetera, et cetera. So basically speaking, the biggest lesson that I learned was it was not the difficulty as operators is not in creating brands. It is actually in scaling brands. And most food businesses are owned by owner operators. And their difficulty is not in building the brands. It's actually in scaling the brands, as in going to a new market. You've got to spend a massive amount of CapEx, between 50 and 150K. You've got to then spend, you probably take 6 to 9 months before you're profitable. Therefore, you've got the OpEx that you've got to pay out of your pocket when you're making losses. So that's another 100, 150K. So you're looking at 200, 300K before you're actually profitable, including taxes I'm talking about. And because it's a high top line, you pay a lot of VAT. And then essentially, because of all of these factors, most people don't scale their brands, even when they're successful, or don't scale it as rapidly as they should. And which then brings less and less choices for consumers everywhere. So that was one of the biggest reasons. But then we also understood that if you've built a really good playbook for your operations, and if you've got a really good marketing engine behind the scenes, as in good social media presence, good marketing reviews, or consumer reviews, etc., it's easy to scale those brands. So we combined all of these lessons, all of these elements, and then based on from the lessons from third-party platforms where they take a big chunk of our money, we started building our own platform and made it even better in the sense that our platform, our online e-commerce platform, is pretty much like Just Eat Delivery, Uber Eats, but it actually supports consumers from ordering from multiple brands in the same order. So imagine if you go to a food hall, scan the QR code, and you're sat there, you can choose from all the food operators in that food hall, isn't it? So exactly the same thing. You can sit at home and do that and order from Abjak directly. So we built that we call it the digital food hall. We built that digital food hall. We built that operational efficiency. We built those technology systems at the back end. We built some procurement sort of contracts and relationships with suppliers. We have a good load of customer brands. We call it customer brands rather than partner brands, because we use those customer brands to then reach to consumers. Without the customer brands, there is nothing to sell. So because we are not in the business of building these food brands, we are in the business of empowering those food brands. So we did all of that, and essentially in between we've trialed a lot of different things, including food subscriptions and events and corporate events and all of that kind of stuff. But then right now we've got to a point where I think we've hit that golden goose where we know this is going to work in the sense that micro food halls essentially have got that frontage. We're doing exactly the same operations as before. It's not a pivot. It's a strategic sort of development or a change, progress in that sense. The operations is exactly the same, but unlike it being in a dark kitchen where nobody can find us and dependent on third-party platforms, we are in a space where there is a demand in the market, which is in suburban areas. So suburban areas are usually under sort of served in the sense that food business density is less than 1 in 350 to 400 people versus 1 in 50 people, in urban areas. So every 50 person has got one food business to them in urban areas, whereas on the opposite end, it's not the case. So there is underserved suburban areas. We set up these micro food halls where centralized operations. So every brand is different. Every menu is different. You can have a chicken brand like KFC. You can have an Indian brand like a popular Indian brand. You can have a Korean brand. Everybody have their own branding, their own menus, etc. But all of the production and operation is coming from the same team in the same kitchen. So that's the back end of the operations. And then we work collaboratively with the brand owners. As I said, we work with brand owners who've got 1 to 5 different sites, got really good playbooks. They've got good marketing and brand equity. Then these are all combined together to create a collaborative marketing element where they tell their consumers that, oh, you can find us now in Abjak's Micro Food Hall. And we say, come to Abjak's Micro Food Hall. We've got this customer brand here, your favorite brand, etc., etc. And finally, consumers have the convenience of pickup, eating, and deliveries. But then that's also supported by our online ordering platform, multiple brands in the same go.
How does it work with the businesses? So I know that you mentioned that they pay a setup fee, but what about like month on month? Do they get a percentage or? Yeah,
it's a revenue share. Okay. So we pay a percentage of the revenues, net revenues that we make, back over to them. So they make regular profit, not cash flow, because they're not having to spend anything on operations. There's profit for them, and they break even by the end of about 6 to 9 months, depending on how big the brand is or how much brand equity they've got. The way in which we intend to implement AI agents is by, if you imagine, in the old days, people used to call up people in a takeaway shop, isn't it? And they used to tell, oh, can I have that? Can I have this without the salt or without the sauces? Can I pay? And then, it's cash on delivery or whatever it is. Whereas nowadays, people have got to go on the app, choose between all of these. Imagine there is an AI agent there. And it's talking to you real time as if you're called a person in there, and it's moving between the screens, and it's actually delivering the orders.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we want to do on the front end. But on the back end, we've got technology systems that we're building so we call it a kitchen operating system, which is a data sort of lake for everything. So from sales to procurement to sort of marketing and everything in between. And that is then trained to our next level of technology, which we call it Intel Chef. Real-time task allocation, real-time task monitoring. Imagine computer vision cameras around it. So each camera is looking at each station, looking at what the chefs is doing. And chefs are doing, and then telling the chefs, is it the right way to doing it? Is it not the right way? Have you made an error? So every quality control issues, we can actually find that. And then the chefs, for example, in an actual kitchen, most kitchens are run by a head chef. They will tell you, okay, you do that, you do this, I'll do this, blah, blah, blah. Whereas when you have got this system...
It's just an overpaid AI agent.
Exactly. But it's not a case of, this is not an initiative to replace people. It's actually to empower people as well, to upskill and to be able to manage and maintain these systems rather than doing this repetitive task. Very few people are in this industry because they're very passionate about it. Most people are in this because they want a job. And it pays reasonably well, and you get good hours. That's it. I was a pot wash guy. I was a line chef. I didn't do it because I love washing dishes. Let me do this for the rest of my life. So exactly the same way we're going to do that, and then all of that contributes to collaborative robotics. So that's like 5-10 years down the line.
Me and H have both worked in kitchens, and when there's those tickets coming through, those orders coming through, and it's next. You got someone at the front. How long? And this is. It can be a very, very stressful environment.
Yeah.
I mean, having somebody over my next station or over my station, which I'm predominantly working on, which is like saying like, okay, next task is to do this, boom, 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 boom. Like, what a dream.
No, exactly.
It's like having a PA in real life, like in the kitchen.
And I'm sure it'll happen, whether it's with us or not. It depends on how quickly we grow and how long we survive. But I think it's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. That's going to be how it's done. But then it's also a case of, it's not just the inside the kitchen part of it. It's also the logistics part of it. Drone deliveries is going to be a commonplace, probably not in urban centers, but in rural areas. And we've already got, companies that we've got contracts with who are building drone delivery technology that we want to probably bring into the UK in like 2 to 3 years time. But the idea is, as I said, the vision is to build these technologies to actually support the mission, which is empower food entrepreneurs, build their models out. We want to build at least 20 to 25 of these the micro food halls. And then all of these brands will be about licensed brands, which will be about, I think, in the region of 80 to 120 brands, which we want to empower in that process. But then we want to acquire the top 10 of them. And then we build it into a franchise model, and then we get to about 100 sort of micro food halls in the UK through that franchise model. And then we want to do it in different countries and get to that vision where everybody everywhere have access to great, authentic food that they love in their neighborhood. So the idea is using that technology, using the procurement systems, using the scale benefits that we have, build the Amazon for food. That's my dream. We never know if we're going to reach there, but that's something that sort of, as Elon Musk says, you need something to get you up in the morning and be excited about. So even if you don't get to that place, you're working towards that. And when you're working towards that, there might be 100 other opportunities that you'll be able to capitalize on, if that makes sense. So the business has then got that potential to get there.
You strike me as somebody that knows their numbers out the back of their hand. What's the value of the company right now?
Right now it's worth close to 2 million quid. We've surpassed about 600k in revenues. We're not profitable yet, but that's on by design, because we're a VC-backed company. We've raised close to £500,000 in VC and angel investment funding. And the reason is that when you're in this model, you've got to scale rapidly. So when you get close to profitability, you scale again. So you're not profitable again. So the idea is to scale it rapidly in the next couple of years. We want to get to about £10 million valuation by the end of next year. So that's where we want to get to.
So I just want to maybe help you to look from an outside perspective of you 5 years ago arrived to the country with £300 in your pocket, and now you're telling me that in 5 years' time, the company that you've built off of an idea that was just a pain point that maybe you found when coming to the UK could be worth £10 million.
5 years we've got much bigger targets. 10 million is for the next 2 years. In the next 5 years, the forecast currently that we've worked out, we'll be doing about 45 million quid in revenue. And for context, Wingstop, have you heard of Wingstop?
Yeah.
Wingstop recently, the founders actually got the license from America and they built it here, the three guys, can't remember the names, but they recently sold it to a private equity company. They have got 58 sites. Their profits their revenues for last year was 85 million. Their profits was 3.2 million net profits after tax, but they sold the business to private equity for 400 million. So you can imagine the valuation that they've got. So that's because of the growth potential, the brand equity, as well as the capital assets. Usually when you're in a QSR space, you've got at least the leasehold of these properties, which then obviously is worth something. We want to obviously have the real estate, properties ourselves, like pretty much like McDonald's or Starbucks is doing. So in 5 years' time, we want to be closing in on 50 million quid in revenues, and valuations, I don't want to speculate on it because it depends on what is the asset value that we've got as well on top of revenue multipliers.
You gave me a very business answer, but I was looking for something a little bit more
deep. Yes.
When it's very, very easy to be caught up and always to look for the next thing. We are both, we do that as well, right? Because you are always looking for the next thing. As an entrepreneur, you've got this thing inside you, which is like, that's great, but what's next? Yeah. But on a personal level, genuinely, the growth and the opportunities that have come in the last kind of 5 years of you making that jump, really changing your life. Yeah. and what the potential could be in the next couple of years for you, even like half a decade, which in the long, if you look at it broad, it's a really, really small amount of time, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that make you feel?
Well, it's on the outside, everything sounds great. You know, everything sounds like, oh, this is a successful thing. It's not. It's regular struggle. It's stress. It's nearly traumatic at some points. You face bankruptcy some points. You get the worst problems in the business. So it's not, it's all roses once you start your business, as you probably know. And therefore, I'm not going to say that it all feels great. It's not. You've got to go through a lot of pain. And most people want the outcomes, but they don't want the experience of going through it. You don't want the struggles. And I think what has actually helped me is taking responsibility, taking risks. And I think, as I said earlier, life is completely uncertain. From my perspective, life is completely uncertain. There is no security or safety anywhere. You can be sat in the room and still, die a painful death from whatever. Not literally, like in different ways. So for me, it's a case of you go out there, you take on these risks, take on these challenges, you take on you take that leap of faith into the uncertainty. Through that, you learn a lot. Maybe you'll fail, maybe you'll succeed, but you'll learn a lot. I think you'll learn a lot more from failures than success. So once you learn from that means that you've got a lot more tools. And in this modern day and age, you've got a lot bigger network. It's, as Naval Ravikant says, it's not how hard you work, it's what you work on and who you work with and where you work. So essentially, you build that network, you build the tools and the competencies that you need, and you essentially make yourself competent, maybe not the right word, you make yourself ready to face the next challenges or uncertainties in life. So I never really started off from saying, oh, I'm going to make X amount of money. That's never, and that should never be the perspective that people start from. I started off from a problem that I faced myself. I started off from a problem that was not being solved, from experiences that I've had and other people close to me have had. And that sort of led me to building the solution. And I think it's, again, Simon Sinek who says, passion is an output, not an input. The more you work on something, the more passionate you get about it. I was never thinking I would start a business when I moved here. I never thought I'd be in the food business of all kinds of businesses. And I'm in this business, and I think I'm more passionate about it than when I started 5 years ago. And I can share that passion with everybody in the team because I've spent so much time and effort. And this is literally 12, 16, 18 hours. Sometimes I sleep 3 hours. There's been days. So we got the leasehold agreed for the last microfood or at the end of November. And we had to launch on the 15th of December because we wanted that Christmas sort of demand there, capitalize on that. There was 2 days where I absolutely didn't sleep at all, which is not healthy at all.
Was that around the time when we first spoke? I think it might have been.
I think it was somewhere around that time. I think it was close to end of November, early December. And it's very unhealthy, and you can see that I've lost all my hair. It's not good in a lot of senses. But when you even, as I've mentioned at the start, when you ask any person who's ever successful, I'm not calling myself a successful person, not at all yet. But I think thanks. But then it's a case of you ask them that question, and they'd all say there has been sacrifices. So there is a lot of sacrifice, there is a lot of pain, there is a lot of struggle there, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat any of that. You don't get into the world of business unless or build something that you want to scale without being ready to face all of that. For me, it's a case of, personally, I want to prove to myself what I can do. So almost like David Goggins says, you go to heaven or hell or whatever, and you go to speak to God, and you go God shows you this was what you were supposed to be, and this is where you are. And I don't want that, and similar to Jeff Bezos going, you regret minimization policy. So essentially for me, it's a case of figuring out what is the best I can do for myself. And I am currently in the process of filling up my glass. My objective in life is to pour from that glass when it's full into other people's glasses. cups, whatever you want to call it. So symbolically speaking, using an analogy here to help other people. That's my idea. I'm not really a big fan of, I still use a £500 car from 3 years ago that I got from a scrapyard. I don't care. I don't care about the lifestyles. I used to buy loads of sneakers, but I pretty much wear 3 or 4 different pairs of shoes. That's it. And that's because I want to, sometimes it's formal, sometimes it's informal, sometimes it's football, whatever. And I don't really care much about having a posh, expensive lifestyle. It's not about the money. Money is a what do you call it?
Bonus?
Yeah, it's
almost a byproduct.
Byproduct, that's the word. Yeah, it's a byproduct of building value for other people. And for me, obviously, everybody needs money. Money is not worthless. You need money to be successful. But I think once you get to a certain point, then the marginal value that more money adds to your life is very low. And then you're just basically status spending. You know, rather than having a £200,000 car, you're having a £2 million car. You're getting the same thing, and
still gets you from A to B, right?
Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah, so for me, that's one of my end goals, and I want to take care of my mother. She's gone through a lot, and she's been the rock of my life, and I want to take her around the world. So the whole point I'm trying to do here is to have, in 10 years' time, what I want to have is complete freedom over my time, money, and energy, so I can spend it with the people that I love. So I want to have a family of sorts, and kids and everything, and trying to be retired by that point in time. Take care of my mom, go around the world, travel as much as possible, and then share what I've learned. I don't think I'll be a guru of any sort, I wouldn't want to sell courses. I wouldn't want to charge people to learn from me. I want to give it away for free, and I want to give it away for free because I don't need money. I don't need to charge them. I don't need to, charge them for the time that I spend, because I'm giving it away for free. So that's where I would say, where I see, going later on in the future. But for now, this is my, this is the time that I'm willing to struggle, and it is a struggle, and it is painful. And obviously, when you externally you present the nice parts of the business or the nice parts of your life, but internally it's a lot of pain, and you've got to go through that. So I don't know if I've answered the question like completely. How I feel is a very much of a mixed set of emotion, but I think last year at some point I looked in the mirror. I don't know why I did that, but I looked in the mirror and I asked that question: would 18-year-old Rudy be proud of this 28-year-old Rudy? Would 18-year-old Rudy want to be someone like the 28-year-old Rudy?
I think so.
Yeah, the answer was yes. So I never really had, so I always struggle with low self-esteem, low confidence. I wouldn't say confidence. I'm confident in terms of the business, but I'm not really massively.
You know it inside out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'm not a very confident person. I'm not very comfortable in a lot of these situations. As when I've moved through the business life, I call this the kindergarten of the business. Kindergarten of business, I've become a lot more of a shy person or an introverted person. I like my own time, that kind of stuff. And there is insufficiency complexes, there is a little bit of imposter syndrome. But I think thinking about it in a way that how is this going to change me as a person, and how is this already done, actually helps think that, okay, you've done something. Mm-hmm. It is good where you are, if that makes sense.
Before we round off, brother, to any young entrepreneur, to anybody that could be in a similar position to the situation that you were in, what would be the best advice that you would give to them from your experiences? What would be the advice that you would give to the 18-year-old Rudy if he had to go through everything all over again?
Mm-hmm. No, I think, again, I don't believe that I'm in a position to advise anyone, but I'm just sharing what I've learned along the way. And I've obviously got these kinds of advices from a lot of different people, especially, as I said, mentors. So I've managed to put them into a few different frameworks, basically. And one of them that, if I was to ever write a book about something, that will be about this. So growth of any kind can only happen when there is 3 elements to it. One is action. Number 1, you need to obviously work your ass off. You need to work hard, regardless of what you're doing. Anything that doesn't come without that is short-lived. you can be lucky, but it's short-lived. So there is no shortcuts there. The second part is consistency, and obviously compounding effect is real. The more you do, for example, look at Nvidia. Like, nobody really even thought Nvidia would be one of the biggest companies in the world when they were playing games with the GeForces and the GTXs. So Nvidia has become one of these biggest companies because they kept doing what they're doing really, really well over the years, and obviously they become a big company. So that consistency. And then you look at Berkshire Hathaway, the investment companies, they made their money after they turned 65, 70 years old, So essentially that because of compounding effect, they continue to do what they're doing consistently across like a long period of time. Mm-hmm. So consistency actually multiplies the impact of your work, multiplies the impact of the action that you're taking. And the third part is the focus. Focus is saying no more than what you actually focus on. Self-discipline is also a part of that focus because, I don't think anybody is self-disciplined to be in the wrong environment and say no to things. They're probably putting themselves in the right environments. So, for example, I block all my social media apps from Monday to Friday evening. So I don't do anything, like I'm not on any social media. I mean, I don't really have profiles in most of them, but I still block it, like example, YouTube, etc. So I only get like 2 days a week that I can actually go on it, but then I'm trying to increase the hours and, that I don't do it. So the reason is that when you block these distractions away, you've got a lot more focus on what you're building, what is more important for you. Spending time with yourself and figuring out what you actually want to focus on and saying no to the other things is actually one of the key things that will help you be more focused. And that focus is pretty much like a big headlamp versus a laser. If you're a laser, you can actually, cut diamonds with a laser. Mm-hmm. Whereas with a headlight, it eliminates a lot of area, but it's not really powerful. So that is what I would say, the three ingredients of growth. But then if that doesn't just apply to anybody who's building a business, but also applies to people who are, learning and, in the universities or trying to find a job. And if you're just out of university or school and you want to find a job to start with and build some experience, what I would say is you look at three things again. One is what are you good at? Is one thing that you need to look at. And if you're not good at anything, then look at it this way. What do the world need? Okay, there is so many things that the world need, and then connect that with how well can you do that? Can you do it really well? Can you do it like slightly well, or can you learn how to do it well? And then the third part is how irreplaceable can you get? Anybody's value in any organization is their replaceability. So, you can't devalue anybody's jobs. People's worth is not equals to their job, but you can easily replace a janitor, whereas it's difficult to replace a CEO because your value is irreplaceable. So there is that kind of element where you look at what is important, what is required, what the world needs, what you can actually do really well, and then what you enjoy doing as well. And then you look at how can you make it irreplaceable. So that's another model that you can think about to build your career, build your business, or whatever it is. And the third one I would say is just a cyclical nature of, if you want to build something on your own, how do you start with? So think about it in this way. For you to be successful in anything, you need to be good at problem solving. You need to solve good problems. For you to solve problems well, you need to have the right world view. You need to understand the world in the right way, because that's where you can find the opportunities. For you to have the right world view, you need to have taken good action, and you need to have had good feedback. So good feedback comes through good action, good structured education, shared education and applied learning, et cetera, et cetera. But that good feedback then comes from, having an organized that good action comes from organized mindset. You need to have the right kind of mindset to be actually doing the right kind of work at the right kind of time. But that organized mind, that's where everybody gets stuck. Like, how do I organize my mind? Start with logic. Start with logic, reasoning, and common sense. That's all you need to start with. And to start with, you then just to start with logic and reasoning, for you to have that, very simply, functionally, write if-then statements. If that is the case, then this should be the answer. When you start working through those kinds of elements, then you become more logical and reasonable, then your thoughts are more organized, then you're able to take the right action, then you get the right feedback, then you get clarity of thoughts is basically what you're building from all of this. And you get the right feedback, which then means that you can solve the right problems, you get the right worldview, you can solve the right problems, and therefore you then become successful. So that's a third way of doing that. So these are some of the things that, I've built a lot of these elements, but these are the ones that I can actually remember. These are things that I'm already working on as well. And for anybody who's already out there building a business, who wants to recruit somebody to their team or sell a product to somebody, the best way to do that, in my experience, is to draw analogies. So here's something that I say to my people. I've been fortunate enough to have some fantastic people around me, co-founders and friends and family, and all of that. And one of the key things that I say to anybody when I'm trying to recruit them, as I said, I measure their competence, their compatibility, their passion for what we are doing, their first principles thinking, divergent thinking. If they've got multiple levels of expertise or areas of experience, then obviously that's a added advantage. But that's me sort of assessing them. But for them to actually buy into it, they need to get something, isn't it? So I actually say to them, imagine everybody's stood on an island. The world is full of islands. And everybody has got, okay, I want to get to the other island. I want to get to that island A, B, C, D, E. Loads of different islands. Analogically, I'm speaking about people and their goals, their aspirations, where they want to get to. And everybody's trying to build a boat, which is their career, which is their business, whatever it is. And a boat can actually, take one or two people, and there's like robots, rowboats and not robots. And they've got to cross these oceans. These oceans can be treacherous. They could be shark infested. They could be storms. They could be big, massive waves. You never know which way it's going to go, and you might not reach that destination. Whereas on the opposite end, what you could be doing is you could get the right kind of people from that island. You could get a boat builder, a navigator, a ship's captain, an engineer, sort of a chef, for example, or a fisher, or an entertainer. You bring all these people together. You need to have the right proportions of the right people, and then you build this boat together. By the time you've got all these people and they're building the boat together, then it becomes a ship. It's not just a boat now. You've got to make it big enough. So then that ship is capable of carrying everybody into these different islands. Then that ship can withstand the storms. Sharks are not going to eat you. You're not going to get stranded. You're not going to get lost or sunk in the ocean. So you can go to this island, and when you get to the other island, another island, you can actually get down. People who wants to get down on that island can get down. More people, or different people that you choose, can get back onto that ship if they like that ship. And that ship goes around and goes to these different islands. And those islands all represents everybody's goals and aspirations. For me, Abjak, the business that I'm building, is a ship. It's not the end goal. It's a vessel. It's what you call it. It's the way through which I want to get to all of my goals, as I said. And I'm offering this vessel to somebody else as well. This is a vessel that can carry all of us, and they can go from one place to the other. You can get down at a different island if that's your goal, if that's where you want to get down. There is nothing forcing you to keep going. But then this boat everybody should actually improve the boat, improve the ship. And then it sort of becomes like a rocket ship almost, and then it can go on forever. So that's the idea that I actually portray,
really like
in
that
an analogy,
yeah.
To then get the right kind of people to be interested in working with us.
Amazing.
Does that make sense?
I really like that analogy.
Cheers. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything that I'd say at this point I can share. There's loads more, but probably for another time.
Well, when you get that 50 million a year and the valuation through the roof. Maybe we can run it back, and podcast might be in a little bit of a different shape, and maybe we will be too
definitely.
as well.
I hope it's a very different shape. I hope this is massively successful. I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. You've got the right energy. You've got the right ideas, and you're talking to the right people. And I think you're hustlers. You're figuring it out, and you don't need to know everything before you start. And I don't think there is a lot of courage here. What you're doing is exactly what we need more young people to be doing, isn't it? Like, rather than just blaming everything for externally, like internal locus of control, everything that's happened in my life is my responsibility. So why don't I take control, go out there and build something that I'm passionate about? And I don't need to know everything. I'll figure it out. And that's exactly what I see in you both. And
that's the plan.
Thank you, bro.
Hopefully, it'll all work out.
We appreciate that, bro. And we appreciate you taking the trip, man. We know you traveled far to come here. It's been a pleasure. I feel like I've learned some things. Hopefully the guys at home listening, watching, have all learned some things. And we can run it back.
Cheers. Fantastic. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Guys at home listening, watching, we appreciate you as always. If you are on Spotify, make sure to drop us a follow and a rating if you haven't already. And if you are on YouTube, make sure you like, comment and subscribe. Turn the bell notification on so you get notified every time we release a podcast. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Catch you soon.
Peace.